In the cinematic sea of prequels, sequels, reboots, and reimaginings, the Movie Retakes podcast considers the merits and desires for Hollywood's new takes on our beloved movie classics. Brothers Matt and Chris Sully examine the latest retake franchises, pitch their own original retake visions, and share their love for the movies that made them. This is Big Sully.
And this is the other Sully, moderately sized or reasonably sized or snack sized, perhaps, Matt Sully. And we appreciate you coming back to listen to another episode of Movie Retakes. Go over to Twitter right now and check out the details on our giveaway we've got going on. This is a great one. You're going to want to sign up for that and do all the fun activities to get your points and get that coveted prize package. Also, go over to wherever you're going to listen to the podcast, subscribe to us. Go to YouTube, subscribe to us over there. Everywhere you can get a hold of us, please do, and go subscribe and follow.
A beginning is a very delicate time. Know then that it is the year
2020.
In this time, the most precious substance in the universe is the
Movie Retakes podcast. And today's episode of Movie Retakes is Dune. I don't know if we're supposed to say it all menacing or not, but whatever. It's a fun word to say.
It is.
Yeah. And we're going to talk a lot about the David Lynch movie and the upcoming movie from Denis Villeneuve.
In today's episode, we got a lot in store for you. As my brother mentioned, we're talking about Dune, but we've got a few questions answered for you along the way, like who's the biggest director you've never heard of? How many Dunes are there? And what other epic sci-fi movie almost didn't get made?
Great questions. I can't wait to find out the answer.
Oh, we'll get there.
Cool. So what are you watching these days?
Well, I mean, we've got time on our hands, so I'm cranking through the content right now, and that includes, for me, with movies and TV, a new season of Brockmire has landed on AMC, which I love that show. Season 4 takes some real chances and does some things different, and I'm loving it. Goldbergs and Brooklyn Nine-Nine still have new episodes landing. I love both of those, as well as Superstore. And one of my new addictions is Tacoma FD, brought to you by the Broken Lizard crew. They're back with the TV show. I believe this is season 2. It is really well done. And it's honestly, their movies can be great or cannot be so great. This one just delivers every week with a great cast. I really like it. With podcasts, I'm still listening to Mark Maron's WTF. Barry Sonnenfeld was the most recent one I've listened to. Lights Camera Pod, who we follow and share their stuff on our Twitter on occasion. My buddies at Talkin' Pops and my friends at Geek Together have some great episodes. And then for games, I'm streaming on my Mixer channel almost every day, playing games like Animal Crossing, which I'm fully addicted to. Yes, this old man likes Animal Crossing. And Call of Duty Modern Warfare Warzone, which is it's a fun game. It's free, which is a key to point out to all of you. Big download, but absolutely free to play. So why not try it? It's a battle royale mode game, lots of fun. And then I can never stop playing Candy Crush.
You got a ton going on. I don't think I ever mentioned this, but I play this card game. I played it forever, and I can never remember because it's called Animation Throwdown. That's what it is, because I think the name is lame. But anyway, it takes all of the characters from like Bob's Burgers and King of the Hill and Futurama and all these things, and it's like, it's one of these games that's just like a bunch of other games where you play these cards, you do combos, and you attack, and you have defense and all this sort of stuff. I've been playing this thing for, I don't know, 2 or 3 years, like every day.
Dang.
And I'm part of, I've moved my way up where I'm in a guild now. We're actually like a top 50 guild. And so we do all right. I'm probably the worst one in the group. For watching stuff, we did finish the first season of Outsider, which I like how it ended up. I think it kind of took a little bit of it took some time getting there. Like it got a little slow in there, and wasn't really certain if I was gonna enjoy where the direction they were going. In the end, I think it turned out okay. A bit of a mislead there with saying Jason Bateman was in it, because was he in an episode and a half and then he's gone? Thanks a bunch. But for the most part, I like the rest of the cast. I also watched, we just started Schitt's Creek, which had been recommended to us before. And we had even watched an episode a couple of years ago, I think. And we're like, that was okay. But now we started watching it and we're like, yeah, this is way funnier than I remember it being from that one episode. So we're totally into that. I think we'll keep watching that for quite a while. Everybody in there is just brilliant. All the characters are really good.
I love that show.
Yeah, the people you think you're not going to like the sister and the brother and stuff, you think they're going to be minor and not so good. They're the funniest ones on there. Like it's really put together pretty well. Westworld, I am continuing to watch, but I think I might be done. The last couple episodes, I just feel like it doesn't know what it wants to be anymore, and what it is becoming, I don't care. Like I'm just not into it anymore. Yeah, I'll go back and watch season 1, I think, before I continue watching anything else. The direction they're taking it, and now they're turning the last 2 episodes where it's become like an action show where now it's just all about the next action sequence where they're going to fight with people and stuff. I'm like, I don't think that's what it was supposed to be. I don't know. I thought it was supposed to be more of a drama. Anyway, I think I'm done with that one, and I'm okay with that. What else did I watch? I watched Yesterday, and I liked it. It was very charming and stuff, and I like everybody in it. Kind of like the middle to third act felt like it was dragging on, but it ended up all right. I dug it.
There's a lot of questions I had after finishing that one that I'd love to do a deeper dive on one day, but I want to see more from that world. I like the idea that there were several things that had changed.
Yeah.
And he kept stumbling onto new ones, and it was such a shock to him. I really love that.
Yeah, I like that too. Times it felt like it was a bit more of like the concept they had was all they had. They were like the story needed to develop a little bit deeper, but it ended up being, an entertaining sort of one. I'll probably watch it the one time and not go back to it. But yeah, I like that idea too, because it reminds me of everything. Kind of comes back to Sliders for me. Is always like,
yep.
These shows where there's this, you go to an alternate version of your reality and it's a slight difference or whatever, and that's always kind of fun. All right, so for today's special segment, I still haven't named this segment, something like Behind the Curtain or Behind the Scenes or whatever. You can name it. Everybody out there, if you're listening and you like these special segments, why don't you suggest a name for me, because I'm obviously not creative enough to come up with one. All right, so this is going to address the question that my brother asked earlier. Who is the biggest director in Hollywood that you've never heard of? Well, let's talk about him. From 1968 to 2000, Alan Smithee directed almost 50 movies and a dozen television episodes of various shows. So why have you never heard of him? Because he doesn't exist.
Say what?
Alan Smithee is the official pseudonym used by film directors who were so dissatisfied with the final cut of their work that they would choose to disown the project. By Directors Guild of America guidelines, these dissociative directors were required to prove to a guild panel they were unable to maintain creative control over their own film, and once approved, were never to acknowledge being the project's director. Instead, the name Alan Smithee would be listed in the credits as the project's director.
Huh.
Yeah, crazy.
I never heard of this.
Me neither. When David Lynch's Dune was re-edited for television, Lynch had his name replaced as director. Because he also wrote the movie, he altered the screenwriting credit to Judas Booth, a combination of the names Judas Iscariot and John Wilkes Booth. It was a reflection of how he felt producers treated him and ultimately assassinating his beloved film.
It's really perfect.
Yeah. In 1998, the film, an Alan Smithee film, Burn, Hollywood Burn, was released, in which a man named Alan Smithee, played by Eric Idle, wishes to disavow a film he has directed, but is unable to do so because the only pseudonym he's permitted to use is his own name. Great premise. The film was directed by Arthur Hiller, who reported to the DGA that producer Joe Esterhaus had interfered with his creative control and successfully removed his own name from the film. So Alan Smithy was credited instead. The film drew mainstream attention to the pseudonym, and following this, the DGA retired the name. So we probably won't see Alan Smithy directing any more projects after that. Spelling of the name varies, but Alan Smithy, ALANSMITHEE, was reportedly the standard. Using that specific spelling, an anagram of the name would be the alias Min.
Oh, wow. Sexist and weird.
Yeah.
That's
kind of cool.
I'd never heard of that. I cannot believe in all these years. And then also, if you are aware this is a thing and your name is Alan Smithy, the worst possible career path for you is director. Way to go, Alan.
Yeah, you're going to want to change your name or spell it differently.
Yes. Yeah, before you direct your first film.
Or you immediately come in and you've got several credits of things you haven't done.
Yeah, but all those are horrible credits according to this theory.
So what?
That's amazing. I cannot believe in all these years of knowing things like the Wilhelm scream and little weird shout outs to movie tidbits. I've never heard of Alan Smithy.
Yeah, that was just from doing some research on Dune here, and I thought it was very interesting.
And Judas Booth.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Great name.
Wow.
And that's just for the, he has his own, Lynch has his own opinions about the theatrical cut as well, but that was just for the the edited version for television. So he obviously was very upset with that one.
He and I have something in common. I also have some opinions on it.
Yeah, we'll get to that. And so that does bring us to the franchise of Dune. And let's go over the synopsis here. A duke's son leads desert warriors against the galactic emperor and his father's evil nemesis when they assassinate his father and free their desert world from the emperor's rule. There's a lot more going on, and that's kind of a hard description there, but okay. This stars, and forgive my pronunciation, everyone, Jürgen Prochnow, who I know as Sutter Kane from In the Mouth of Madness in 1994, and he freaked me out in that one too, and I liked him in the movie, but the guy just creeps me out because of In the Mouth of Madness, which is a terrifying and disturbing film that if you watch it, you will never be the same person, which I think is the point of the movie, actually. Francesca Annis is Jessica. She's like the concubine of the Duke, who is Jürgen Prochnow. She's also in Krull. From 1983.
Yes.
I think we're both fond of that movie.
God.
She played the, I forget what the character name is, but essentially like when they go and they have to talk to that spider woman that lives, she's like trapped inside. Yeah. So she's the young version. She's not the old hag version in there. And she's very lovely. Leonardo Cimino, who was from the V series. He's also plays scary German guy in the Monster Squad from 1987. I'm trying, because not everybody's seen this, and I know some of these names are literally foreign, but also that, I'm trying to reference other movies you may have seen. Everybody knows Kyle MacLachlan. This was actually his first movie, first anything, pretty much.
Wow.
Sean Young, who was in Blade Runner a couple years before this, in 1982. She was in Stripes a year before that, in 1981. Patrick Stewart, we all know. Sting, Dean Stockwell, you should know. From
Quantum Leap,
thank you. Max von Sydow, who I think we talked
about last week. During Ghostbusters 2. Yep,
that's right. He did the voice of the bad guy, much to the chagrin of the guy who played the physical role, who walked out in the theater because he didn't know he had gotten voiceover work from Max von Sydow. Virginia Madsen is in there briefly as well. She actually opens the movie and then really doesn't have much of a part after that, which I'm okay with having her face on the screen for there. They could have done the whole movie that way. Lovely woman. Jose Ferrer, Brad Dourif, and Kenneth McMillan also in this, and they're from various projects, but I'm not going to go over that, but you'll recognize their faces. This was directed by David Lynch, who previously had done Eraserhead in 1977 and The Elephant Man in 1980. Both were critical acclaim, 90% rating on Eraserhead, and 92% on Elephant Man from Rotten Tomatoes. And I have not seen either. Eraserhead was on my list. Like, it was one of those things that I'd seen the name and, working at the video store. It was on the shelf. And I remember passing it time and again, and I even read the cover before several times. And apparently it's typical David Lynch. It's just freaking weird and a bunch of experimental sort of shots. The Elephant Man, I think, is supposed to be a bit more mainstream. And so I'm interested in actually going back and watching that one. After Dune, Lynch went on to do Blue Velvet in 86, the Twin Peaks series and movies, Lost Highway in 97, and Mulholland Drive in 2001, and a host of other projects. Mostly his work now is like short films and documentaries and stuff. So, and one of the things I was watching on another documentary about Dune was how this project kind of steered him away from big Hollywood budget movies, and he's much more comfortable in this smaller realm now.
Interesting.
Yeah. David Lynch also wrote the screenplay for Dune. Obviously, it comes from the Frank Herbert book before that. And he writes most of his stuff. Everything he directed, everything I mentioned just a minute ago, he also directed those, or also wrote those.
That's pretty rare.
It's a select group of directors who actually spend that time writing the screenplays as well. I'd like a list to see who all does that on a regular basis.
Tarantino, one of the only other ones that comes to mind. He doesn't adapt other people's work. Like he writes for the purpose of making a film.
Well, I mean, a lot of his stuff borrows from other things, but I don't think he's directly taken a book and adapted it.
Mm-hmm.
But we'd have to look that one up. So this came out in 1984. We've mentioned that year before. Big year in cinema. Mm-hmm. Ghostbusters, Karate Kid, Gremlins, Beverly Hills Cop. And because of all those big hits, I'm sure we're going to come back to that year again on this show. Dune came out December 14th alongside Starman, which you did mention on Ghostbusters as well.
And interestingly enough, in the most recent episode of The Goldbergs, I think I mentioned this before, how he always has cool shirts and posters. I just watched it last night. He's wearing a Starman shirt, which I would love to own.
What's on a Starman shirt?
Just the word Starman. I mean, there's not,
Okay. Like, there's no cool logo or anything. Yeah. In its opening weekend, Dune was actually number 2 behind Beverly Hills Cop, which had premiered a week earlier. So initially it did get some money, and it ended up getting $30 million
in opening weekend.
Office. No, that's
total.
Okay.
Yeah, back then that was unheard of. Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's on a $40 million budget, so it is a loss. And the studio considered it a failure, as did most critics. 53% on Rotten Tomatoes, which I'm actually surprised it's that high, because every review you read, especially from back then when it came out, is just 1 star across the board.
Wow.
Some of them felt like it didn't deserve the 1 star.
Wow. Rough.
Yeah.
Okay.
After David Lynch's Dune, there was 2 miniseries created for the Sci-Fi Channel, or the Sci-Fi Channel, or whatever it wants to be called. I don't know why it switched to that. I'm sure they had their reasons. Frank Herbert's Dune came out in 2000, 71% rating on that. And I had heard from people before that they enjoyed it as far more than the movie. And Children of Dune came out 3 years later. There's no consensus on the rating there, so we don't have a Rotten Tomatoes rating there. In addition, the documentary Jodorowsky's Dune came out in 2014. That's rated 97% on Rotten Tomatoes. And I actually went and rewatched that again for the research, because I had watched it once before and enjoyed it thoroughly.
Who's Jodorowsky? The director of that version?
Yes.
Okay.
So he was the intended director of Dune in the 70s, I think. I think it was... Yeah, I'll have to look up what the exact year was, but it was sometime in the 70s. He was basically putting together the Dune project. He really wanted to direct it. And this documentary takes us through a reflection of that, where how he was putting the team together,
His
who
vision
all was involved. Yeah, and he's got very, very interesting documentary. I before I'd recommend, actually, I wouldn't recommend you go watch Lynch's Dune. I'd recommend you go watch this documentary instead because it's far more interesting.
So you're recommending, instead of watching a film, I watch a documentary about a film that was
Yes.
never made. Boy, that says a lot about what you think about Dune.
Yeah. Sorry. Hopefully nobody rushed out to watch Dune prior to this episode. But it's an experience. And we'll talk about that too. Like we're kind of segueing into that now.
Yeah.
So let's do that. Let's talk about our opinions and what we thought of Dune after our rewatch. Do you want to go first?
No, go ahead. I want to hear what you have to say before I say anything.
Okay. All right. Well, let's start with some good stuff.
There you go.
I don't think that's going to take too long. I actually really, I had watched this a couple of times before, and this is another one, and I'm sure this is going to happen many, many times, where I'd watched it when I was younger, and I can't tell you exactly how old I was, but I remember being young enough where I was seeing it and thinking, this is one of those movies that's for adults. And like I literally remember thinking that, like, the concepts and the visuals and the wackiness of it, I kind of just thought that was maybe a normal movie-going experience. I mean, Lynch, any project you see of his, it's kooky. Like, the guy sees things differently, and he tries to put some weird things on screen. The way he puts these visuals together, but also just some weird grotesque stuff that he seems to enjoy, or just visually confusing, if not like, I think it's there for like an emotional response. Like, these are basically art projects. Dune is the closest I think he got to making a legit movie where, and you see it, like, the casting isn't bad. Like, there's some good folks in this movie, and they do their best. The kudos to the costume crew, the set design, the effects. Like, I think all that was pretty well done, especially for the time. There was some groundbreaking stuff in this. And I think that, and especially, like, I'll probably talk more about Jodorowsky's Dune or whatever, but those guys were starting on the project years before, really trying to push the envelope on these effects, because I mean, that's what this movie is. It's you have to embrace all the special effects and stuff, and that's one of the things I'm very curious about, how they're going to do this newer one. I think they'll do it quite well. I think we're finally at a point where all the effects, and I trust, well, that's an opinion for further down in the conversation. Anyway, visually, I think this thing is cool. I would recommend watching it just for that. There's some great visuals in here, really setting the tone for these different, the planets, but also these houses, the Atreides and the Harkonnens and stuff. You see, a lot of the care that went into, like, when you cut to a scene, just seeing what's in the background, exactly where you are, mm-hmm. and who's going to be on screen, and all that's really well done. I don't think that Lynch should have written this. I think somebody else should have done the script. Also, I mean, there's a lot of things that went wrong, and depending on who you ask, well, a lot of people are going to agree that the production group, the Dino De Laurentiis group, is the ones that pressured him to cut everything down, mm-hmm. and there is a lot of stuff in there that is from their hand, where, because so many scenes were cut out, that then they had to go shoot these summary sort of scenes. That whole intro from Virginia Madsen is an add-on they had to do later on, because so much stuff they cut out, they needed her to come in and basically explain everything to people. Sense. And you get that feeling through the movie. You're watching it, you're like, okay, this was an add-on, this was an explanation, but so much of it's explanation. It's like 70% of the movie is just them spoon-feeding you. Here's this terminology. Here's what this thing does. Here's what this planet is about. Here's what these people are about in their history. And it's annoying.
Arrakis,
Like, I wish if for that alone, Lynch had the time to make this sort of sprawling. The guy needed 2 movies at least. I mean, it's a huge story. And yeah, so pacing alone kind of ruins any chance this thing has at just being a normal movie you can sit back and enjoy. But I'm not going to say, had he been given all the time, that it would have been a great movie. I think that Lynch is still just not a mainstream movie guy. Like, it still would have been weird. It still would have been gross. It probably would have felt too long. Like, I don't think he was the right guy for it, and that's unfortunate. But like I said, there is some good stuff in there. I'm not saying you should never go watch it, but I'm not going to tell you to rush out to see it either.
I agree with you almost 100%. Even your projection of the amount of time they spend explaining things, I wrote 80%. We're really close on all this. I did my patented bulleted format. There were some things I wanted to call out. Totally agree with you on Virginia Madsen. What an opening. I did not. To start, I don't know if I ever sat and watched the entire Dune before. I thought I had. I think I only saw chunks of it at different points as a kid into maybe my early teens. And it's one of those I could not bring myself to go back and watch because I was afraid it would get to the point where I am right now after watching it again. And that is, seriously, the whole theme for this thing is WTF. What was going on for this film? Like, they should just call it Dune WTF, like, because that's how I feel about the whole thing. Virginia Madsen, gorgeous, like, nice addition there. You're right. I could watch her explain anything at that point. The sets were giant and elaborate and amazing. Kudos to whoever took on those builds. And to find out that the budget for this thing was only $30 million, I think they spent it all on the main actors and the sets and the wardrobe. I don't think they spent it on anything else. I mean, that's a big chunk of it, but still, sets are amazing. The wardrobe was equally on point with that amazing futuristic cross with vintage royal. Those futuristic military uniforms on Arrakis were awesome and functional. I actually like that explanation about how they work.
Yeah.
I had to point this out. I stopped the movie to write this down. The worms. Of course, everybody thinks of the worms in this, but then they explain that the worms attack vibrations, and I'm like, okay, somebody was watching this and said, I've got a better idea, and we got Tremors.
Yeah.
Yeah, and thank God for that, because I love Tremors. I even like the crappy sequels to Tremors. There's like 7 of them now, and I've watched them all. They're great.
Yeah, I like them too.
The Baron is the ultimate WTF of the whole movie.
Bring in that floating fat man, the Baron.
What is this? They didn't explain this guy. We just come into a room. He's having surgery on his boils on his face. He gets up and flies around. They don't explain. I don't get why he is the way he is. I feel like that's some of the stuff that was cut out. I've read explanations online, but I shouldn't have to read explanations online. They didn't have that available to him at the time. That was bad editing there, I think. Totally forgot Patrick Stewart was even in this. I love that he has a mullet, and he's still bald. Almost bald. That was brilliant. It took me a while to even realize that was a mullet. I thought it was part of his uniform. And at one part, he goes into battle holding a pug. Why is he holding the pug?
I think that was Paul's dog, or it was Jessica's. I don't remember. It was a royal dog. It was one of their pets.
It was, but you put that thing in a carrier. You don't carry it into battle. I don't understand that at all. Did the pug help with his battling? I don't get it.
Maybe it had special powers. Pug powers.
I know they did. Maybe they cut that part too. Yeah, there was a full explanation on the pug powers I missed. The Baron's nephews, Sting and creepy Smiley McSmilerson. I don't. Sting was totally wasted. The guy is known for his voice, and he barely spoke in the whole film. And they made them both look like they were freaking insane, which I guess was part of their role, but like to a huge extent. They seem like total psychopaths. The cat and rat combo box. I still don't understand what was going on there. Why were a cat and a rat tied together in a box?
Yeah, that was one of the weirdest and cheapest looking things. It looked like they literally duct tape a rat to a cat. I think they did. I think this was before these oversight committees on making sure pets weren't treated cruelly.
I thought the same thing because that cat was trying to escape the entire scene. The rat was probably dead. I don't even think that thing was alive. The cat was moving it. Yeah, what's up with that? And also, I'd love a shirt with that on there because what a conversation piece. And finally,
the randomness of it would be great.
Right? People be like, oh, wait, what is that? Or they'd get it and they'd be like, why do you have that on a shirt? I catch the reference. That's weird. And then finally, the little sister, which, by the way, did you see who the little sister actually is? She's actually a fairly well-known actress right now. I meant to write down her name. I'll have to go back to it in a bit, but she's a redhead. As an adult, she's been in several movies and series I've watched. I had no idea that was her as a little girl, but they dubbed her voice, and I get that there were supposed to be the scenes where she was like the witch voice that could control people, but the whole time she had that really weird dubbed, creepy-ass voice. I don't really know what purpose that served, but...
a messenger from Muad'Dib. Poor Emperor. I'm afraid my brother won't be very pleased with you.
Silence!
Kill this child. She's an abomination. Kill her.
Get out of my mind!
Not until you tell them both who I really am.
Wow, another part of the whole WTF thing.
Yeah, I remember reading about her. I think this is Alia. Yeah, it's Alicia Witt.
Yeah, which...
if that's right.
Yeah, she's actually very pretty. I've seen her in quite a few things. She's a redhead as an adult.
Yeah, you'd probably seen her in Supernatural. She was in an episode of that.
There you go.
She was on the Nashville. She was on Walking Dead.
There you go. That's right.
She was on Justified, which I like.
That's
that
it.
show.
That's where I'm coming from. I love Justified, and she plays an interesting character on that. But overall, I'm with you. It was like they constructed what was going to become a really good movie. They built the sets, they made the wardrobe, they hired these great actors and actresses, and then it just, like, you had all the pieces of the puzzle, and they put it together wrong.
Yeah.
That was my takeaway from the whole movie. It was tough to watch at least the first hour and a half. The last 30, 45 minutes, I actually enjoyed.
I agree. I think around, like, the hour 40 mark, it hit its stride, which is, that's too long to take to get there. But once it hit there, I'm like, okay, I'm kind of into this now. Like, this is kind of cool. The whole battle sequence where he ends up, I'm not gonna, like, if you're gonna watch this, you're never gonna watch it, so I'm not worried about ruining anything here. Plus, it's really old. Like, we shouldn't worry about spoilers. Anyway, yeah, like, they end up, like, he joins the Fremen. They have all the weirding stuff where they're shouting. Basically their shouts end up becoming lasers out of their weapons, and he's riding that giant worm. I mean, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It looks neat. The music, you kind of get into it and stuff. It actually around that mark, it actually comes into itself, and you are kind of interested in how it's going to come out. There were some, I kind of got into a rabbit hole on looking into this thing. One, because in writing our own pitches, I felt like I needed to understand a bit more about the world. As much as they spoon feed you in the movie, at the same time, you walk away feeling like, did I really understand that? Like, I'm not sure. And I still don't think I do.
WTF.
Yeah. But I feel bad that it's apparently one of the top selling sci-fi books of all time, and I've never read it, and so I feel like a dope for not having read it, because it is pretty cool subject matter. I would probably enjoy it, but apparently that puts me in the same boat with David Lynch and Jodorowsky. Neither of them had read the book before they wanted to do the project, and I don't think they ever did read the book.
Wait, what? That's
they
insane.
Just knew. They knew it was a successful book. I mean, this was actually of if novels can be worldwide hits, which they can be, I guess they're bestsellers and whatever. This was actually up there. Dune was a well-known book, and there was awards given out. Like it was worldwide a hit. And so obviously people are going to want to scramble to make a movie out of this. And the projects had been in talks since like the early 70s. So this book came out in like 65, I think. And and they had started around Hollywood people were trying to get things made back as early as 71. They just would not come together. And that's one of the weird things that this whole movie seems to have a strange sort of draw to it, but also a curse. Like, it's an odd thing. Like, how many people, and this is one of the things that you're asking, like, how many Dunes are there? Well, I mean, we got the Jodorowsky was supposed to make one, and you got to see this guy. He assembled this team of artists and special effects guys. He wrote out the whole script, but they spent months putting this thing together as this giant package to take to the studios to say, give us money, but here's exactly what you're getting. And this giant book, if you think about the Bible, you've got like your home version, and then you think about these Bibles that you'd go into, some sort of elaborate church in Europe or something, where this thing weighs 50 pounds by itself, and to turn a page you need to call an assistant. That's what this was. Jodorowsky put together, and it is literally probably like 10 inches thick, like deep, and it's beautiful. Like, it shows all the artwork in there and everything, and they did put a ton of work into this, and they made one of those for each of the major studios. So supposedly, I mean, they still could be floating around somewhere. Well, not floating around. Nothing would be. They pretty much have their own gravitational pull. They're so massive. But he put in the time and tried to get that done, and just couldn't get studio backing. It just wasn't going to happen for him then. And there was other ones too. There was guys before that were supposed to be putting something together, even before Villeneuve, or like after Lynch. There was talks of remakes from like Peter Berg was supposed to do it, and things just kept falling by the wayside. We did get the the 2 miniseries from Dune, from Sci-Fi there, so that's something. And I feel I would like to go back and watch those, because those are apparently decently received, and I'd like to see another treatment of it. But we're gonna get Villeneuve's Dune anyway. That was it too. Was that one of the other people involved that was supposed to make this was Ridley Scott. He was supposed to be doing it before Lynch, I believe, and wouldn't take it on. He was self-evaluating how much time he wanted to put into projects, and he looked at this thing and knew it was going to take years, and it did take years to put together, and he's like, nah, I ain't doing that. And then he went on to make Blade Runner, and there's the answer to the movie that almost wouldn't have been made. If he'd have done that, he might not have done Blade Runner, which is also an interesting tie-in, because then we get Denis Villeneuve did the Blade Runner sequel, and now he's going to do the Dune sequel. And so there's all these sort of touching points. And the guys that Jodorowsky put together, some of the guys he put together, effects and art, went on to do Alien. Because H.R. Geiger, the guy who does that, I think he's Norwegian or Swedish or something like that, does all those weird art things where it's all skulls and basically the aliens as they look. He was working on Dune, Jodorowsky's Dune, and did a bunch of mock-ups and stuff and artwork for that. And then because that went by the wayside, those guys had become buddies and went on to do Alien together later on. So he did, in effect, at least bring some people together that went on to make great sci-fi. Just wasn't his project.
That's really interesting. And that makes sense. They learned a bunch of stuff from this experience, and maybe it took 36 years, but we'll finally get the film that we should have got back then.
Yeah, maybe. You could. I don't want to keep going on about this the documentary, but at the same time, I feel like I should, because it's like you watch this thing and you can kind of you see the sadness and the regret in all these guys, because they were into this. They were young, like they were all in their like 20s or something at the time, and they spent months, like they all moved to Paris, I think, or something, to work together in this small area, just hammering it out, like day after day, putting together the artwork and all this sort of stuff to put together this massive package. They were all into making this movie. Like, they just knew it was going to be their dream come to life, and just to not have it happen. Jodorowsky, he wanted his actual son, to play Paul, and this kid was like 12 or something. He started him at the beginning of the project with a martial arts expert, 6 hours a day, 7 days a week, for years, to train him so that when he went and they started filming, he would be the perfectly tuned Paul Atreides, and the project never got made.
That's crazy. I really,
it is crazy.
I wonder if any of that crew, sans Jodorowsky, was involved in the new Dune in any way. It'd be interesting to see if there's any ties. Did they bring them in to work on it? Did they maybe bring them in as consultants, given the amount of work that they had put into it back then? Were some of them so excited about it back then, and just the opportunity to work on it now, they'd be willing to do just about anything? I bet some of them are involved.
That would be nice. Oh, and that was another thing. Yeah, so that was another thing I was thinking about when we were talking about the music at the end of Lynch's. The music in David Lynch's movie for Dune is all done by Toto, and Jodorowsky's was all going to be done by Pink Floyd. Like, he had already worked, and that's how far he'd gotten with all this.
Dang.
Like he'd gotten them to agree that they were going to do all the movie. Like, we weren't going to get Sting. We were going to get from Rolling Stones. Mick Jagger was going to be in the movie. Salvador Dali was going to be in the movie. Orson Welles was going to be in this movie. But anyway, he'd assembled all this stuff, and it was interesting. And, you know, after finishing watching that, I actually still don't think his movie would have been all that great. This guy before was sort of Lynchian similar, where his movies were very artsy and strange, and I think we probably would have got the same thing. So I don't think his movie, his version of Dune, really would have been all that great either. I think he was also the wrong guy to direct. So in conclusion, we don't have the Dune that everybody deserves and that everybody wanted, and I think hopefully Denis is gonna give that to us. But who knows? Maybe he'll be just as cursed as every other person.
I was gonna say, I almost feel at this point that maybe this whole movie will always be cursed. We'll see.
Yeah, I'd avoid it if I were a director. Be like, nah, because you don't want it to be your flop, and then it's confirmed. Yeah, this movie will always be cursed. Who knows?
Well, speaking of some of the names you just threw down, I think this would be a great place to insert our giveaway keyword of the week. And that giveaway keyword, for use later, we'll tell you when. Jot this down. Don't forget it. The keyword is Sting. S-T-I-N-G. And for ASMR fans, Sting.
I will kill him!
There you go.
Man, Sting... Yeah, he's freaking weird in that movie too.
Yep.
And I love making fun of Sting as much as everybody else, because it's a great thing to do. But nobody is going to make fun of Sting any more than Sting in this movie, where he's so over the top, just stupid. And that outfit, he comes out in like that blue leather thong. It is embarrassing.
Yep. But he looked good. He was in great shape.
I guess.
Way to go, Sting. That was during his days of the like hour-long yoga sex sessions that he's famously talked about before.
Oh, stop it. That's disgusting. All right. It's pitch time.
Oh, boy.
This is the time.
I'm going to go first this time. I'm going to just tell you right now, you're all going to be very disappointed in me. I could not wrap my head around this at all, other than what I'm going to give you here. Right? Normally we come at you with a original idea for some sort of retake, sequel, whatever. One word came to mind for all this, and that word is reboot. Start over. Take the framework of what could have been a great film, fix what was wrong with it, and deliver it to a new generation 36 years later. That's my whole thing. Now, I'm going to pretend like I do not know any of the information about the new Dune that's coming for this. Instead, I looked at the framework of the original Dune from 1984 and said, if I were going to do this, how would I approach it? And I spent the majority of my time on recasting this film. I took a different direction at this whole thing. Now, before I tell you anything else, I would like to give you a warning. I like a little preface to all my pitches. I know this film was based on the 1965 Frank Herbert novel of the same name, but I've never read the book. I'm not a book reader. While I'm sure that the adaptation was not 100% accurate to the book, especially since it sounds like the directors never even read the damn thing, and there are many fans out there who would scream, why did you change this, and why did you change that, and so on and so on. I have only the film as source material. I didn't watch those sci-fi, sci-fi shows. I didn't watch Jodorowsky's Dune, which I'm actually interested in seeing now. I didn't watch any of that. I am strictly going off the 84 Dune. I have that's my source material. That's it. I don't think I could get through that novel in months, much less a few hours of prep time for this podcast anyway, even if I wanted to. So here's what I did. I'm going to lead with my director and stars because, again, this is where I spent most of my time. Director, I want Alfonso Cuarón, that did Gravity. I like his vision of, he uses the backdrop of space in Gravity really well to tell the story. So this is someone who can merge the set with good acting. I think that movie's a prime example of that. I mean, the way they direct it, I won't go into that whole thing, but go check out behind the scenes of Gravity if you want to know more. So here's what I did. I picked the lead stars, the lead characters of the movie, and recast them. So Paulus Atreides, played by Kyle MacLachlan. I'm going to lean back to somebody I just talked about in another one. I want Nicholas Hoult to take over Kyle MacLachlan's role. I think he's the right age. He's got that swagger that's seen on stage or on screen, and if he grows his hair out a little bit, he can play the role, right? I don't know why I feel like that's necessary for the role. I just do. Lady Jessica, originally played by Francesca Annis. I want another one I've talked about before. Maybe everybody hadn't heard. Lena Headey.
Oh, yeah.
I want her to come in. This person has to be tough. They have to be almost witch-like, and she's the name that comes to mind right off the bat for me for that one. Leto Atreides, originally played by Jurgen Prochnow. You mentioned him. I want Christian Bale in that role.
Yeah,
I think he'd be perfect. And imagine Christian Bale as Nicholas Holt's father. It works. I can see this. Moving on, Gurney Halleck, originally played by Patrick Stewart in the 84 Doom. I'm going out on a limb here, but I like this idea because of just the way Patrick Stewart carried himself on screen. I want Giancarlo Esposito to play that role. I like his methodical approach to characters, and I think that'd be great. The way he trains a young Nicholas Hoult in this new one. Dr. Wellington Yo, or You, played by Dean Stockwell. I want to go with Bill Skarsgård, who played Pennywise in the new adaptation of It and It Chapter 2. I think he's a great actor. He's a little crazy looking, and I think that's exactly what this role needs. Chani, I don't remember how they said her name, Sean Young's character, which, by the way, she was robbed. She's beautiful. We should have seen a lot more from her. Jennifer Lawrence to play her role, which is interesting because I wrote that down then realized that Jennifer Lawrence and Nicholas Hoult had a thing in the X-Men movies as a love interest, and here I've redone that for Dune. That was an accident. Baron Vladimir Harkonnen, originally played by Kenneth McMillan. What else did he do? I want John Goodman to play that role. I know John Goodman has trimmed down over the years, but I want to see him put on the fat suit and go crazy for this one. I think he could do it. I think he'd be really good in the role. Fade, as we've referenced many times, played by Sting. I'm going to go out there again. Caleb Landry Jones, who is a young actor who was in Get Out and 3 Billboards. He has this crazy look about his face, but he's a great actor. You have to look him up. Caleb Landry Jones. Yeah. I think he'd be perfect. Glossu Raban, who was Fade's brother, the cousin, or the nephew of the Baron. I'm going really far out there on this one and I'm ashamed I did this, but I Googled overweight actors because I was trying to think of somebody to play this role, and I went down this rabbit hole with an actor I've loved for years, and I didn't know that he had gone through this transformation. Ethan Suplee, known to be an overweight big actor. He was in Butterfly Effect. My Name is Earl.
Oh, yeah, I like that guy.
I love that guy. He's good in everything. And I interestingly enough, I think he was in David Lynch's new Twin Peaks series. I think I heard him talk about it on a podcast. Apparently, he's been fighting weight his whole life. Again, I'm going down a rabbit hole here. Now he's ripped. He's been working out. He's put on all this muscle. He looks great. But I think he could play that crazy nephew role really well alongside Caleb Landry Jones. Liet Kynes, I think I pronounced that right, played by Max von Sydow. Ralph Fiennes.
Oh, okay.
And then finally, Peter DeVries, originally played by Brad Dourif. Ben Foster needs to play that role from The Mechanic. This is another dude, great actor. Everything he's in, I hate him, but it's because he's such a good actor. He's creepy AF, which is perfect for this film. So there is my cast. I went and spent a lot of time on this because I think the strength of this film should rely on the sets, the wardrobe, and the acting. And this is an all-star cast right here as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I didn't know Ben Foster's name, but I like him.
Right?
The one thing here it pops up is Hell or High Water, and I really like that movie.
I think creepy, and he's one of the first names that comes to mind. He's just too good at it. So, again, my pitch is not real original, but simply I want to fix what they screwed up in Dune 84. So here's my ideas. Pitch is pretty simple. It's a reboot. Try it again with updated technology, a new cast, and get to it. While the original Dune spent the first 80% of the film setting things up and educating us all on who and where everyone it is, focusing at times on actual thoughts of the characters and the stories to help move that explanation along, storytelling in films has evolved over the last 36 years. We spend the first few minutes of this reboot of Dune showing a very similar explanation of the planets and main characters included. Then we get going. Storytelling, graphics, and simple on-screen prompts can help tremendously in educating the audience about when and where we are. This new reboot will start a little earlier in Paul Atreides' life to show the training he went through and progression of his character in the film. The best stories told, especially in an unknown setting, are the origin stories of the characters, and that is something that the original Dune from '84 skimmed over with most of the major characters. That lack of character development caused us to not really understand Kyle MacLachlan's version until well into the time jump on Arrakis. The same can be said for this love interest in the film. Originally portrayed by the gorgeous Sean Young. She was gorgeous, but we didn't know crap about her. They barely told us anything. The only reason we had any interest in her character was her beauty and the fact that Paul had dreams about her in advance. While we should retain those premonitions in this reboot, we need to get a rundown of her character and the other inhabitants of Arrakis upon Paul's arrival on Arrakis. This can be done with a simple explanation from Chani, played by Jennifer Lawrence, with flashbacks of their evolution shown on screen. The other big opportunity that can be updated and corrected with a reboot is the story of the Baron and his nephews. Once again, we were expected to understand and detest the Baron immediately in the '84 film, but the only thing we had to go off of was his looks and a few completely random acts of violence after his treatment. Let's see a bit of backstory about this character and show a bit more why he evolved into this beast. His nephews could still remain fairly silent in the film. Still not sure why they made that choice with Sting, but why? Let's see some character development for them and let the audience have some feelings before we're expected to hate them. I have said this so many times before, and I'm going out on another rant here, but I love Joss Whedon as a director. I fell in love with everything he did, starting with Buffy the Vampire Slayer, because no one does character development like Joss Whedon. And while I didn't peg him to direct this, because I don't think it's quite his style, he gets that part right. Bring him on as a consultant if you need to help write that story to develop these characters, because he can do it, especially in a sci-fi setting. So sadly, that's all I have. I just want to fix the original. I feel it can be done, and there is your cast and your ways to fix it. It's a totally different pitch from me compared to normal, but that's what I got.
Well, It actually matches my pitch quite well, because while you spent time casting, I didn't do any casting at all. I spent all my time writing the story.
Interesting.
And I only just now chose a director as you were talking.
I've done that in past episodes, I'll admit.
Yeah, and so there's a few things. First off, I doubt I'll say this much on this podcast, but if there's a movie and we're in total agreement here, that deserves a true reboot, it's Dune. I feel like the story is epic. It's interesting. It has all the drama, espionage, action, and romance of truly great movies, and is perfect for this ever-widening embrace from modern audiences for both fantasy and science fiction. I mean, people are ready for this movie. They're ready for epics. Audiences have told Hollywood that we're willing to go see endless Lords of the Rings movies. So yes, all of this stuff is totally appropriate, and yeah. Give us more Dune. I feel like Dune not only is Villeneuve making the right choice of making this 2 movies, but I could totally see it being a trilogy. He is also actually going along with what I think would be a good idea is he's going to make a television series to go with it. So that is going to be very interesting because the more I thought about this world and all the things happening, I realized not only was it very, very interesting, but we're just scratching the surface. Like, we're literally only talking about the conflict on this one planet of the entire universe, of which is basically known because we talk about the emperor of the universe, where I feel like his part needs to be brought down, especially in what I'm looking at as a first movie. I think Dune as the focus still makes sense for the first movie and probably for most of it. But I feel like if you're going to branch out at all, there's so much opportunity. I mean, this is basically another Star Wars world where you have endless stories to tell here because we can reinvent, you can invent all new people, all new races, all new struggles and planets and all this sort of stuff. There's a lot of material here to work with, and they need to do that. So get a snack because I've written out movie 1. Take a bathroom break because while my brother there went and cast the entire movie, I wrote the whole damn thing. I won't apologize.
Here we go.
Yeah, here we go. All right. I do think this is probably needs to be at least 2, if not 3 movies. I didn't write all 3 movies. Here's the first one. We start by showing Arrakis, aka Dune, and the extensive mining operations there. The procedure and equipment is efficient and customized for the desert planet and its indigenous dangers. The machine noise is muffled and programmed to have erratic timing and is guarded by the Harkonnen army. Then we see a handful of Fremen, the planet's human inhabitants, attempting to sabotage a mining vehicle. They are caught, strapped with thumpers, and flung into the desert. The Fremen, glowing blue eyes, wide in panic, attempt to flee, but giant sandworms emerge and eat the saboteurs whole. One Fremen is left, visibly older than the others, though his eyes are brighter. His hands are out as if ordering the worms to a halt, and for a brief moment they obey. Then one of the Harkonnen soldiers shoots the man in the leg, and he falls to the sand in pain. The worms' hesitation is over, and they eat the old Fremen man as they descend back into the dunes. As we track the freshly mined melange spice back to the processing facility, we discover that spice harvesting is behind schedule, and the Emperor is becoming impatient with constant delays. This information goes through the Harkonnen chain of command, showing us the key figures in the Harkonnen house, Fade, Raban, and finally the Baron. The Baron is seen beating a Fremen servant at the palace. We see that many timid-looking Fremen are working as servants at the palace. The Baron explains to his nephews Fade and Raban that their post on Dune is in no way guaranteed. If they are to be the one and only caretakers of the spice, then they must create a royal union in marriage to the Emperor's daughter or to take it by force. The Baron kills the Fremen servant to prove they are the rightful rulers of Arrakis. We go to another planet, an outpost on the shores of an arid lake. Paul Atreides is staring at the pool of water at the center of the once grand body of water. He's approached by his teachers and caretakers, the Mintat Thufir Hawat and Gurney Halleck. I'm merging Duncan Idaho into Gurney's character. I feel like one of the things we need to do is slim people down. They discuss how planets can change, sometimes taking life, sometimes making it, but change is both inevitable and necessary. We learn that Paul is in self-proclaimed exile from the royal Atreides compound, but has actually been sent away from his own protection from the bitter Bene Gesserit witches who loathe his existence as being against their plans. Only his mother Jessica has a Bene Gesserit, also a Bene Gesserit, is able to keep his whereabouts secret and safe from her witch sisters. As word comes in that another attack is underway, Gurney argues that Paul's mother would be unhappy to discover how involved the Duke's son is in the planet's skirmishes. Paul says he refuses to be useless to his people, and that Gurney would be there to protect him anyway. The two go into battle with other Atreides soldiers, easily defeating the local uprising. Paul, however, is brought to the ground in combat, losing his weapons. He shouts in anger, and the ground rumbles beneath his attackers. Other soldiers come to aid him. When the war is over, Paul is summoned back to his parents at the Atreides palace. His journey over Caladan shows us that the planet is lush and the waters are plentiful. Paul admires it all with an optimistic grin. At the royal house, we learn that Paul's mother, Jessica, is pregnant with his sisters. Since this girl is what the Bene Gesserit desired from Jessica all along, she felt it was safe for Paul to return. In addition, Paul's father, the Duke, tells them all that the Emperor has selected House Atreides to take over spice mining from House Harkonnen. They are excited for the opportunity and what it may mean for their house's future, but worry the Harkonnens will not give up control so easily. Fade and Raban are visiting the Baron Harkonnen, now back on their homeworld of Gadi Prime. The nephews are angry over the loss of their rule on Dune. The Baron assures the boys that he has plans to regain their palace on Arrakis, but can see the bloodlust in their eyes. He sends them back to Dune to aid the Atreides in quelling the Fremen resistance to the mining operations. Paul and the family adjust to life on Dune. Paul's often joining men in the operations, obsessing over the spice, the worms, the desert, and the Fremen people. He befriends a servant named Chani. She tells him how the Fremen have lived on Dune for centuries, given long life by the spice, a gift in exchange as caretakers for the worms, who some of their people can control through a union of the mind. The mining operations are a disruption to the harmony of the planet, which is why they are desperate to see it halted, though they lack the power to do so. Given their weakness against the royal house's armies, the Fremen are forced to either live in hiding or directly work for their lords. They are happy that the Atreides treat them better than the Harkonnen, but they would still prefer an evacuation of the planet so the Fremen can return to life before. Chani sees Paul's obsession with her people and appears to be using it to gain knowledge of the Atreides and sway Paul to the Fremen cause. She repeatedly asks that he arrange a meeting between the Duke and the Fremen leader so a peaceful agreement can be found. The Duke hears that a Fremen battalion is making its way towards several miners, and that Fade and Raban are on their way to intercept. Chani begs Paul to go so he might negotiate a peace or see that there is little bloodshed. There, Paul manages to stop the outright slaughter of the Fremen by the Harkonnen nephews, resulting in a scuffle between the royal houses. Instead, Paul is injured and returns to his quarters. Jessica looks after Paul, but is often called away by the Bene Gesserit as they are caring for her during her own advanced pregnancy. Chani fills in, and while Paul heals, they become lovers. More attacks take place. Miners are killed. The Duke is furious at the Fremen, but with Paul's counsel requests the Fremen leader to come to the palace. Preparations are made for the visit. With a focus on security, the Baron Harkonnen tells his nephews that his plan is coming to fruition and that Harkonnen assassins will intercept the Fremen party and go into the palace in their stead to kill the Duke. Jessica and other Bene Gesserit detect and foil the Baron's plans, but only know that the Fremen men were there to kill the Duke, not that they were actually Harkonnen in disguise. The Duke, now certain that the Fremen are only violent animals, declares war on the Arrakis people and expels all the Fremen servants from the palace. Paul is conflicted, angry over the faux Fremen assassination attempt, but has fallen for the Fremen servant. In a surprise to everyone, the Duke proposes an alliance with the Harkonnens to defeat the Fremen once and for all, and the Baron agrees. Paul reluctantly goes to war. Initial battles demonstrate the Harkonnen and Atreides fighting styles and show scenes of unified attacks. Paul even saves Fade from an explosion, and they both bring down a sandworm, not knowing it was just a baby, forming a loose camaraderie. The Bene Gesserit see the coming together of the houses as part of their vision, and it must be solidified by the marriage of Jessica's unborn daughter to one of the Harkonnens. This was initially to be Fade or Raban, had Paul been a girl as they expected, but the timetable had to shift somewhat to have Jessica's daughter take Paul's place. They inform Jessica that they can speed the growth of the child if Jessica consumes unrefined spice, something only her people can withstand. Jessica complies, knowing that she might be carrying the Kwisatz Haderach, the ultimate being who will fulfill a destiny of bringing universal power to the Bene Gesserits. The Fremen have gone into hiding. Spice production is meeting demand, and there is a relative peace between the royal houses, but Jessica's new power has allowed her to revisit her thoughts around what she perceived as the Fremen assassination attempt on the Duke. She realizes now that they were Harkonnen men, not Fremen. She wants to tell the Duke the truth, but the Bene Gesserit insists that such news would ruin their plans. Jessica tells them their plans are wrong, and she's worried for her family. She goes to tell the Duke, but news comes in from Harkonnen scouts that a massive Fremen army is assembled far away, shouting for the Duke's head. Arrogantly, the Duke gathers all his troops on the coordinates they were given, but it's empty. They discover too late that thumpers are set all around them underneath the sand. Worms from all directions show up and consume the majority of the Atreides army. Meanwhile, the Harkonnen troops attacks the palace, taking it with ease. Paul has stayed behind to protect the palace and his pregnant mother, but they are overrun. Then Chani emerges from a secret entrance, and Paul is forced to believe the former Fremen servant that she is here to help them escape. She and some of the other Fremen have been hiding out to eavesdrop on Atreides' troop movement so that her people could avoid detection. Before disappearing, Fade confronts Paul and ends up looking the other way so he can leave. A handful of troops escape with Paul and Jessica, and they eventually emerge in a cave system among thousands of Fremen, far more than anyone knew existed. The Harkonnens have complete control of the palace, their rule over Arrakis renewed. Paul learns of his father's death and meets the true Fremen leader, all now aware that the fake Fremen leader was a Harkonnen assassin. They form an alliance, Paul swearing vengeance on House Harkonnen. He shouts in anger, and the walls of the cave rumble. So that's movie 1.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool. I tried to make some things different where I don't like that we immediately are supposed to hate the Harkonnens. I want them to be real, and you touched on that too. I like the concept of Fade and Paul forming this sort of loose friendship where we can play off of that, especially later on when they do actually fight and stuff. I'm trying to slim it down to the focus of the Fremen, where you were doing that too. Let's play up them. They're an important role in all this.
Yep.
And the Bene Gesserits, basically I'm making them where they're kind of, the witches are like the good and the bad. Like they're both, like they kind of switch hands basically, but they're all selfish in their own motivations. They have a plan. They want to stick to that plan. And so they try and manipulate things, which is true to what I read about their characters and their people.
No, and your story is much easier to follow, even though I'm still confused by the names of some of the groups and the people. I followed what you just gave us, and the setting is trimmed down as well as the story, so that you don't have to go all over the universe to follow this, and that's why you break it into multiple films too. Like I like where you left off, because knowing what I saw in the original Dune, that's where it started to really get going. So now we have a second movie to look forward to that we know is going to have some kick-ass battle scenes.
Yeah. Oh, no, it's going to be... like, I tried to give some action in this, and it is I want this to be a sci-fi action sort of thing.
Yeah.
Like that's why I start with a minor battle. We have some fighting in there, the with the Fremen and the Harkonnen. Like, I tried to give it everything. And then, like, movie 2 would be more his... communing with the Fremen. The training, I still think, is a big part of that. And not so much in that whole weirding thing they had. Like, I still want him to have that power.
Yeah.
But in training everybody, I want that to be some more traditional fighting styles, and they can maybe figure out how to make weapons. But then I also want them to concentrate on using the worms. I also wanted to make it to where the worms can be killed. Like that whole thing where basically they shoot them like, it's like shooting at Godzilla, where, you bring in all the tanks and just nothing affects them. I think that's kind of a cop-out. And if you're going to do that, if you have control over Godzilla, then why are you sending in thousands of men? Just take Godzilla and go stomp the place.
Yep.
What's the point? If you have these worms that are basically invincible, then just take one giant worm and eat the whole place.
I think what we have here is a first for the podcast. We're not that far into it, but we have pitched 2 pitches that together are one mega Sully pitch.
I agree.
Yeah. Because you did touch on the things I did in my Fix the Original, and I've come up with this casting. So based on your story, Nicholas Hoult and Caleb Landry Jones will feud, but turns out they have a little bit of a friendship going. Yeah, I dig this, and we're going to see a lot more Jennifer Lawrence action. I like this. I think this works. I think we did it.
We did it. Show's over. We went ahead and took care of this Dune problem for you. I did actually pick a director. That was my impromptu director. I chose Alejandro Iñárritu.
I thought about him.
I would love to see. I love his style,
like
especially with like The Revenant, where I feel like his world building is very realistic, and that's one of the things I think too is don't overdo Dune with all the costumes and the fanfare and all that. One of the things that I think, obviously it's going to be epic still, but I think it could be very grounded in stuff we can relate to. And one of the things nobody really talks about is that their society is far more in touch with fantastical sort of things rather than the computers. They don't say this in the movie, but I read it there. Computers are basically banned. They don't do anything based on computers, which is why they have that whole Mentat species, those guys that are basically human computers, and they're supposed to calculate all this sort of stuff. And so it opens up to why we have these sort of witch people and these, everybody's such an oddball, is because we have to sort of embrace this fantasy sort of stuff because we can't rely on, computers and logic and all that sort of stuff. And that, to me, if anything, doesn't take you into the future. It takes you into the past, where things are simpler. They're more raw. And I think the visuals of Dune should be that, where we're looking more in, like feudal times, or pioneer times, or whatever. You can combine it all, but it should be far more raw and less polished, I think.
And I think you can overwhelm your audience with visuals, or you can overwhelm your audience with story and characters. But if you do both, you get what the original 84 Dune was. Look what the MCU did. They told this huge, gigantic story with all these details and the Infinity Gauntlet and the stones, but they took 24 films to do it.
Yeah.
They did the long con. You can't do that in a 2.5, 3 hour film. So I think you could pick one or the other. To your point, simplify some things and don't overwhelm the audience if you want the story to go on.
Yeah, the whole bit with the Emperor and stuff, and from his, like, we don't even need him.
Yeah, he was throwaway to me.
He's a throwaway, and that whole the weird alien things that do the folding space and stuff.
Yeah,
that's really cool and it's interesting, but it doesn't deserve screen time.
Yeah, but why?
It's a waste of everybody's time. Like,
Agreed.
That's cool, but it's one of those things that, doesn't actually need any screen time.
Another comparison to this, and I thought about it when I started watching Dune, to backtrack a bit, was Game of Thrones. When I started watching Game of Thrones, I felt lost for the first 6 or 7 episodes, maybe the whole first season, because I can't follow these houses and names until you do the character development. And after season 1, I felt like I understood a lot of the characters, and season 1 DVD box set, which I own, actually came with a family tree of all the houses. That's when it started to come together and make sense to me. So I needed a freaking supplement. What do you call it? A supplemental guide to understand, to show. That's too much. Luckily for Game of Thrones, they were able to do that over multiple seasons, much like the long con of the MCU. Again, if we're in a movie with 2.5, 3 hours, you're going to have to find a better way to educate me on what's going on and keep my attention.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you're right. And that makes sense. You need a TV series to take time with this sort of story, or you need those 24 movies or whatever, how many it was.
Yep.
And plus, people become invested. Like, it's amazing that Game of Thrones is as successful with everyone because of that confusion. And I know everybody was struggling with the same thing.
Yep.
Like, we'd watch an episode and I'd be like, who is that guy?
Yeah.
And luckily they just start killing everybody and we're like, oh good, I don't have to worry about him anymore. Cross him off the list. Woo! We're down to like 5 people, so now I can learn people's names. But yeah, you can't do that with one movie. You can't try and give us the entire history of the universe and all this important stuff, because it results in David Lynch's Dune. It was just not good. All right, so we do have another Dune coming out, and that is with Denis Villeneuve. Here's the synopsis.
Okay.
Feature adaptation of Frank Herbert's science fiction novel about the son of a noble family entrusted with the protection of the most valuable asset and most vital element in the galaxy. Not a good description. But whatever.
It doesn't tell us anything
really
except for what we knew from the original Dune.
Yeah. It's got Timothée Chalamet from Call Me By Your Name in 2017. He was in Interstellar in 2014. Little Women, Lady Bird. Rebecca Ferguson, who was in Doctor Sleep and the Mission Impossible's Fallout and Rogue Nation. She's also Girl on the Train. I like her a lot. She's cool.
Do too.
Zendaya, who you're a fan of, I like her too. She was in Spider-Man: Homecoming, Far From Home, The Greatest Showman. She also is in the Euphoria TV series on HBO, I think. I have not watched that yet.
Me either.
It's on my list. She was on the OA series, which I was a big fan of. She was great in there. I think she didn't come around until season 2, but that's gone. Sad face. Oscar Isaac, he's Poe Dameron in the latest Star Wars movies, and he's in Ex Machina in 2014, X-Men Apocalypse. Basically, every movie you go to, he's there in some way. Inside Llewyn Davis, 2013. Yeah, I like him too. He's
Same.
good. Yeah, Jason Momoa is in this. Dave Bautista, Josh Brolin, Stellan Skarsgård, Javier Bardem. There's this casting that is
Wow.
massive.
I didn't know
Yeah.
Stellan Skarsgård is in it, and here I picked Bill Skarsgård to be in my version. I wonder if he plays the
Yeah.
same character that I called Skarsgård for.
I don't know. I think Josh Brolin is going to be Gurney, actually. I think you were choosing.
No, I used Giancarlo Esposito for that role. Boy, we
Oh.
couldn't have been more different in our casting on that. Me and
Yeah, really.
Villanueva.
I like Josh. I'm glad he's in this. And so you'll notice that so Timothy Chalamet is going to be Paul, and this kid's what, 15, 16? I don't know. How old is he?
Dang, is he that
20s?
young?
I don't really know. He's probably a little older, but he is much younger than I think Kyle MacLachlan was when he was doing it.
I feel like Kyle MacLachlan had to have been in his late 20s, mid to late 20s.
Probably mid-20s, but that is more accurate to the book. Apparently, in the book, the main kids, like Paul, the royal houses and all that, they're all supposed to be like 15 or something.
Oh, okay.
So
Chalamet was
they're-
actually born in 95.
Oh, okay.
So he's
So
25.
yesterday. Oh, is he?
Yeah.
Jeez.
Right? Exactly.
But he looks so young.
He does. He much like Ezra Miller. Ezra Miller looks way younger than he really is.
All right. Well, closer to, I don't know what it was, but Kyle MacLachlan, like, yes, he's youthful looking, but somehow in that movie, he still looked to me like he was in his 30s. Like, it just has that sort of adult presence about him. I like him a lot, but I feel like his time with David Lynch has misspent an actor of some value that could have done a whole different spectrum of movies.
You know what's funny is Kyle MacLachlan is now a doctor on a half-hour comedy series with the mom from Everybody Loves Raymond, and he's really funny.
I could see. Does he have like a dry delivery? I
He
could
absolutely
totally
does. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. That he actually probably would do well in comedy. That's cool. This is directed by Denis Villeneuve. Apparently, I love saying his name. He did Blade Runner 2049 in 2017, Arrival in 2016. Big fan of Arrival. I think that movie is just, boy, that's about as close as you get to being just a perfect sci-fi movie. Sicario in 2015, Enemy, Prisoners, both of those in 2013. Good movies. Like, this guy makes good stuff.
That makes
I
sense
like
why
him.
there's the Josh Brolin tie-in, the Sicario. I didn't realize that.
So he also helped write the script for this. He doesn't do a lot of writing. Like in those movies I mentioned, he didn't work on it all, I don't think. He did do some writing for his movie Maelstrom in 2000, but that's about it. The other writers involved here are Eric Roth, who did Forrest Gump, The Postman, The Horse Whisperer, The Insider, Ali, which is one of my favorite movies, Munich, The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, which might be a misstep, but then he also did A Star is Born, the 2018 version, which is fantastic.
Wow, this is a talented writer.
He's got some talent. I'm hoping that. So now listen to the other writer involved here, John Spates, who did Prometheus, 2012, Doctor Strange in 2016, Passengers, also in 2016, and is also working on the upcoming Van Helsing and Justice League Dark movies. And he's going to be involved in the Dune series, Dune: The Sisterhood, which Villeneuve is also going to be involved in as well as a producer. John Spates has the sci-fi chops. He's got these, he's probably going to throw out some some good scenarios for some sci-fi, while Eric Roth there, I think, has the drama down. And that could be a very good combination of writers.
Yeah.
Like, I'm interested. You've got me there.
Yeah.
This is supposed to come out December 18th of 2020.
Seems
We'll see.
possible. I haven't heard any reference to pushing this one back, but still could end up in 2021.
Yeah. The spin-off series, Dune: The Sisterhood, is set to be on HBO Max. Now, this is a prequel to the 2020 movie, focused on the Bene Gesserit, those witch girls that we were talking about. And that's to be produced by Villeneuve. I think he's supposed to direct the first episode as well. But that's interesting. Like I said, this is a world where you have so many possibilities, so many stories to tell. Timing-wise is kind of interesting. I suppose they need the success of the movie to then fuel the series.
You could go either way with that, I think. But it's very interesting. I hope that they finally do this right. In the MCU, you had the movies, and then you had the TV show with barely a tie-in, like a tiny sliver of Agent Coulson and the rare appearance by someone like Nick Fury. And then they've also tried it with Star Wars, but no overlap at all between the characters in Mandalorian and the film franchise. Why? Why not have, like, can Villanueva finally tie these two worlds together? This could be the first time ever we truly get this.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't always. One of the things that I kind of liked about Mandalorian and Rogue One, for the most part, is that we weren't just focused on the same people we knew. Like, that's why I think that it's a handicap when you just need to, or it's a crutch. Like, you're just always talking about the Skywalkers or whatever. Like, that's great, but there's other people in this universe. Can we talk about anyone else? And like, I want to hear other people's stories. I want to know about things that are happening that have nothing to do with the Skywalkers and all that sort of stuff. So I'm open, like, whatever you want to do. And I think there's an advantage here where we know everything about Star Wars. That has been part of our life forever. So those characters, we know them so well. Very few people know anything about Dune and these characters.
Yeah. And
so you can literally take the most obscure character in Dune and make him the star of a show, and nobody would know that there was never a star in the book or anything like that. This is all new, and I think that's exciting because it's still, despite being 50, 60 years old, this material for most people, I would say, is very fresh.
Well, it's what Hollywood is always foaming at the mouth for. You always want the next Star Wars, the next Harry Potter, the next MCU. I mean, those are the backbone of that economy.
Mm-hmm. And I think people have been itching to try and make Dune this big thing for so long. It just hasn't worked out. And so maybe finally it's the time where it will work out. We'll find out. There is a synopsis available on the series. Told through the eyes of a mysterious order of women known as the Bene Gesserit. Given extraordinary abilities by their mastery of the body and the mind, the Bene Gesserit expertly weave through the feudal politics and intrigue of the Imperium, pursuing plans of their own that will ultimately lead them to the enigmatic planet Arrakis, known to its inhabitants as Dune. There's no casting, no release date. Pretty wide open. If Dune is a huge success, especially since he's already agreed it's going to be 2 movies, then I think it'll be just fine. I think people will be interested in that series. And it's going to be an HBO one, right? Is that what it is?
Yeah, you said HBO Max, which is their new service that debuts late May. I'm interested to see how that works. You already have HBO Go, and now they want you to get this HBO Max. It's an additional streaming service, but they're bringing together products or shows and movies from many studios. It's not just HBO-created content. The first advertisements for it started going out just this week with some television shows that show all the different licenses that'll be a part of it. Very interesting. I I think this is going to be that breaking point as far as streaming services, finally, that we've been getting close to when people are going to have to start making decisions on what they have and what they get rid of.
Yeah. Well, and I was going to say that HBO has been quite good at producing good series and supporting them and giving them good budget and everything. So, but if this is not going to be a direct HBO production, then I don't know.
There is some original content as well coming there. I don't know how they decide what goes to Max and what goes to Go. If they take the stuff off Go and move it to, I don't know. I'm confused by the whole thing, but we'll find out.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to some trivia. Here's some things that you probably didn't know about Dune, since maybe you didn't know about Dune at all.
We've gotten some nice comments on Twitter from people of liking this segment, and again, a lot of this is pulled from IMDb and readily available. But who scrolls down there and takes a look at it? So I think this is a fun segment. I'm glad we're doing this, and I hope we continue.
Well, and I try and filter it too. I try take the stuff I find most interesting. There's a lot in there, but not all of it's interesting. Some of it's repetitive.
Yeah.
So this is our show is a good filtering system for all the IMDb trivia.
For sure. I'm going to kick it off.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Writer and director David Lynch turned down Star Wars Episode 6, Return of the Jedi in 1983 to direct this movie, telling George Lucas, "It's your thing. It's not my thing." Wow. What would that have looked like?
Well, the Ewoks probably would have been disgusting little creatures. They wouldn't have been lovable. They would have been things, right?
A cat duct taped to a rat running through the forest. Yeah.
Yeah, more duct tape would have been involved, and like pustules of some kind. The suits worn by the guild members were body bags that were found in a disused fire station dating back to the early 1920s. The bags had actually been used several times, something that was kept from the cast members until after shooting was completed.
Oh, not cool.
That isn't cool. I wonder if that was a private, sick joke from Lynch himself. He knew.
God. And he used body bags in Twin Peaks. There was a whole thing about one character that was dead. Wow. Dude's messed up in the head. WTF again. Original director Ridley Scott left the production after his older brother suddenly passed away. Scott wanted to start working as soon as possible, but Dune would take far too long to reach production. Scott decided to leave the project in favor of Blade Runner 1982. Good call, Scott.
Yeah, and I mean, Blade Runner's this sort of like birthplace for a lot of people for like sci-fi movies and how it's supposed to be done and stuff, and so that is a very important film that needed to be made, and it needed to be made by Ridley Scott. I think he did a good job with it. During the movie's original release, cheat sheets explaining much of the movie's setting and its more obscure vocabulary were handed out to moviegoers at some theaters.
You're not going to believe this. I didn't read that line. One of the thoughts for my pitch, and I thought this was original, was to hand out something to people that went to the movies as a companion guide to explain prior to the movie.
I'd be so concerned as soon as I received that paper, though.
That's why I dismissed it. Same thought.
Yeah.
Yeah, as soon as I thought it, I was like, oh, that's dumb. People would hate that. They did it. Despite being considered a financial flop, it is the David Lynch movie to make the most money in its initial box office run, and the only one to break into the top 5 in its opening weekend. It was number 2, as you mentioned before.
Yeah, I just don't think any of his stuff hits wide release anymore. Like all the movies I've ever watched of his have been on video. Like I don't think I ever went to the theater to see a David Lynch movie. Me either. Yeah. So I don't even know release wise if it's probably one of those where he just does just a couple of venues, but it's not a big wide release. The first movie, so Dune is the first movie to feature a computer-generated human form for those body shields. So if you remember, there's a scene with McLaughlin and
Patrick Stewart.
Who they hit this little button on their belt, and it puts this sort of blocky, pixely sort of shield around their entire selves. And I guess it's pretty cool at the time. It's lame as hell now.
Yeah. It was like Tron meets Roblox.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess that was the first CG.
I was honestly kind of shocked that was in the film. I don't remember seeing that at all. And I was like, wow, for that time, that was impressive.
Yeah.
While shooting on location in Mexico, filming came nearly to a halt when most of the cast and crew came down with Montezuma's revenge. The studio had to build a full cafeteria large enough to accommodate the entire cast and crew for every meal, as well as import all the food from the U.S. to keep the movie on schedule. Dang.
I imagine that's
pricey.
I imagine that's a regular thing now if anybody shoots in Mexico. And that's, you talk about the budget. Like, I think that's why they chose Mexico, is because it was the only one that they could afford to get into all those studios and build all those giant things. And anywhere else they would have done it. They went over budget anyway, but they never would have got it going and shooting anywhere else. David Lynch was originally signed to do 2 sequels based on Frank Herbert's novels Dune Messiah and Children of Dune. The box office failure ensured that the plans never came to fruition.
No kidding. The cow that Raban eats is a real frozen dead cow. Oh, it like rips the ear off of it and starts gnawing on it. Oh, that dude was messed up in the head.
That is nasty. One scene called for Duke Leto, Jurgen Prochnow, to be strapped to a black stretcher and drugged. During one take, a high-powered bulb positioned above Prochnow exploded due to heat, raining down molten glass. Remarkably, Prochnow was able to free himself from the stretcher moments before glass fused itself to the place he had been strapped. During the filming of the dream sequence, the Baron, Kenneth McMillan, approached Leto, who had a special apparatus attached to his face so green smoke would emerge from his cheek when the Baron scratched it. Although thoroughly tested, the smoke gave Prochnow first and second-degree burns on his cheek. This scene is not in either version of the U.S. DVD.
My God, he's lucky he walked away from this film.
Yeah.
Wow. Contrary to popular rumors, writer and director David Lynch made no other version besides the theatrical cut, which that has become a big thing these days. So it sounds like it's been around for a while. The whole release the Snyder cut, that kind of crap.
Well, I remember rumors of like a 12-hour version of this years ago, and that's all it was. It was rumors. And then because it was one of those just weird things. Like, again, this movie just has its own weird persona, sort of, bubble of oddities around it. And that was one of the things I remember people saying over and over again, is there is some cut out there that's like 8 to 12 hours or something. From what I've read, the uncut version, like all his filming, was 4 hours. He wanted to get it down to a 3-hour movie, which I could see being done. Mm-hmm. But they insisted that his max allowed time was like 2. It was something very specific. It was like 2 hours and 17 minutes, and that's exactly how long the movie is. Like, he took up every single second he was allowed to take.
Wow.
In some of the research here, I did find there is, you can find it on YouTube, as Sean Young does this behind the scenes montage. She's got all this footage from her with her own camera, where she just kind of goes along and catches people, all the different actors in different times. It's not like an in-depth documentary or something, but it's kind of charming. And she does her voice narration over the whole thing and stuff, and it's nice. And you can find that on YouTube. I'll probably put that up on Twitter, a link to that. But if you start with that and then watch, there's several other short documentaries and stuff that are pretty interesting about the movie, and just to get to see who was involved and how they reflect back on it. This didn't do well, and it kind of, tainted a lot of people's place in Hollywood, and so they don't want to talk about it, but when they do, you can see there's some hurt there, and it's interesting just to see all these people talk about this project that went so wrong. Yeah, I mean, you don't know when you're working on a project. I hear actors talking about that all the time. They have to trust the director to pull it all together, the editors,
So they must have all thought they were in the midst of another Star Wars at that time, which Star Wars was still becoming Star Wars at that time as well. The first movie had been out. Second one was out. We even made the reference to he almost directed Return of the Jedi.
Right.
And instead he went over and did this. So they must have thought they were all in the midst of the next big thing, and then it fizzled and died.
And by all accounts, it really should have been something big. But
yeah,
like I said, like maybe we'll get that now. And maybe Dune, in all its weirdness and obscurity, will be such a household name now that people, generations now, will be talking about Dune and all the spin-offs and all the characters and stuff, just like they did with Star Wars. Or it'll be a total failure, and Villeneuve will have to scurry off into the darkness, tail between his legs, and be like David Lynch and never direct any major blockbuster movie again.
I mean, I'd say we'll find out soon, but it might still be a while before we find out. This is not one of those they're going to hurry up and send to a home release. They're going to wait.
All right, well, that is it for the Dune episode. Thank you, everyone. We really appreciate all the support. You've been great, all the people on Twitter, and just having people come and comment about the show and listening to it. And we've gotten great reviews. If you want to go out and give us another review, that'd be fantastic. I'll be like the Uber driver, 5 stars all the way. You got to give me that 5 stars, right? I'll give you 5 stars if you give me 5 stars. Love that interaction. All right. Thanks a lot, everybody.
Nerds Unite.